A couple of days ago, an argument broke out about the Romans and their expansion, which rather quickly turned into a conversation about the Cimurs and Teutons invasion. I won't describe the positions of my opponent, but I'll talk about why the Republic, entering this war, made the worst choice possible, but at the same time inevitable and leading it to ruin. Now to the point. A brief exposition. Mobs of barbarians, fairly peaceful but determined, have appeared on the Republic's border. They do not want to go to war with Rome, as the Romans make a rather convincing demonstration of strength by advancing an army to the border, but ask them to let them pass through the edge of the Roman land into Gaul and let them settle there on the Roman border. The Romans listen to them, nod their heads, and then attack and suddenly lose the battle. Then take two and again defeat. The barbarians pass their Cagalome in Gaul, on the way ravaging hostile to them Roman territory. Then, 6 years later, having realized that the Gauls in comparison with Romans live very poorly, return and again so beat Romans that they remember Hannibal and on old habit call the best warrior, Maria, give him unlimited dictatorship and destroy by means of genocide Germanic threat. What's the problem, you ask? And in that, having attacked barbarians, Rome in essence has provoked them, having realized the self-fulfilling prophecy. Rome knew nothing about these tribes, neither knew how many of them, nor where they came from, nor who governs them, nor from whom they are fleeing. They are peace-loving, asking only to be either let through or given land. There's a problem with both the former and the latter. It's scary to let outsiders through your territory. After all, they are barbarians, and there seem to be a lot of them. There is nowhere to settle them from the Roman point of view. The land issue in Italy is already overheated and will soon burst allied war, which again will decide Marius. Let them settle on the border with Gaul, and the Romans where to expand? The sons of Romulus choose the obvious option for them. You cannot let them in. We must eliminate the threat. But the method they choose is folly or treason. Attacking an enemy that you don't even know about is a complete violation of Roman principles of warfare. And they never realized it. Why did they do it? Fear and arrogance. Fear is a typical Roman reaction to the new and unknown. Some 300 years ago, the Gauls, who ravaged Rome, put such fear in its inhabitants that they will calm down only when all of Gaul will be conquered. And how do we know these Cimbrians aren't just as much of a threat? And they turned out to be exactly what the Romans expected. But the Romans made them their enemy by attacking them. The Roman self-confidence was born out of the fact that they have been bending the whole Mediterranean into a horn for 100 years, and here are barbarians from the forests. And so they are attacked without preparation, intelligence, and without any clear plan, except to kill them all. The result? The army is defeated, the barbarians rule in the north of Italy, and the Romans get confirmation of their foresight, overlooking the fact that they realized it with their own hands. But there are consequences. The barbarians realized that the Romans are not so scary. They realized it especially well when they defeated a couple more consular armies. The Romans showed the barbarians their backs, showed them their riches, and worse, in 4 years they still couldn't prepare for their return. As a result, they are forced to pull Maria out of mothballs and then elevate him so that the smoldering conflict from an irritating factor will soon become a threat number one, and the system of the Republic begins to loosen up, all naturally for the sake of defeating the enemy. The outcome is known. Some 50 years later, the Roman Republic collapses. But were there options? There were, but the Romans did not know about them and did not think about them. They had not faced such a situation before. A city taken over is one thing, but a nomadic tribe is quite another, and it's not clear what to do with it. The federates have no experience. There's no free land in Italy. But it is possible to buy the leaders of tribes. Only 100 years ago, Romans bought the leaders of Nubian tribes, but there was a strong Carthage, and here some unwashed barbarians. Why do they need money? We let them into Gaul, accompanied everywhere by their legionaries. Well, what prevented the barbarians from breaking the treaty? The same fear. Just imagine, the Cimbrians had heard of Rome and didn't want to fight it. Demonstration of troops at the passage of the barbarians in Gaul would show that the rumors are true, and belief in the strength of the Romans would only strengthen. The barbarians, for all their savagery, were not fools and realized their vulnerability. Warriors in armored armor, for people who have the best armor is a tanned skin, believe me, look like gods of war. And now imagine the feelings when you defeated these gods. The Romans did not realize it, but the Cimbrians and Teutons showed them all the power. And then again, options. Count them, divide them up and kill them. Transfer to Gaul and let them fight with Gauls, weakening those. Make them federates and as a battering ram begin to conquer Gaul with them. But instead of that, Rome got a war for almost 5 years, colossal losses in people, ruin of lands. You didn't want to share the land. Well, the barbarians freed a lot of land from its owners. But worse, everyone saw the weakness of the Republic. A few years later, the Latins' allies would collapse precisely because they'd been shown that the Romans could be beaten. In order to save the Republic, the Senate and the people of Rome were ready to violate their own laws, to allow the populares to rule, only to push them out again after the war. But most importantly, Rome received fear. Fear which in fact will be the main incentive for all the positive changes in the organization of work with the Germans. Exactly after the Cimver War, Romans will begin to interfere in full force in affairs beyond the Rhine, flooding the lands with spies, buying up elites, stratifying the strong tribes, and elevating the weak, in order to then and them to stratify. The system of federates will start to take shape from here. The Romans will find out that it is much more profitable to declare a tribe a friend and ally of the Romans than to fight with it. But it seems to me that such a valuable lesson the Romans received the most expensive price. The Allied War was a direct consequence of the war with the Cimbrians. The rise of Marius, too, and the consequence was the intensification of the struggle between the populares and the optimates. If history had turned out differently, the Republic could have quietly rotted away for another 100 years and then quietly evolved into an empire. But it didn't. Fear of a new threat was stronger than reason. And from your point of view, is the author right in his reasoning? Let's speculate together, shall we?